my talk is going to be not just about me being a citizen scientist, but as we alluded to, but how all of you can also be citizen scientists in your own life. The reason that is because right now I feel we're at a convergence of multiple worlds. We have the worlds of medicine, wellness, and fitness that are all coalescing. What is this going to mean? This is an industry, this is a world that we've never lived in before. It goes by different names. Some people call it biohacking. I think all of it together encompasses longevity, right? We already have people working in the fields of sports science, physical optimization. But all of this really leads to the possibilities with the new technology and new resources we have for all of us to conduct our own research. Now, sure, some of you here are a lot of researchers in the room, but most of you, just in case you don't know, the N number in a research study represents the number of individuals participating in that study. And really, I think the future of what we're talking about is N equals 1 research. But right now, we don't have that level of personalization. They're not treating all of us as bio-individuals, right? Most of the research you'll hear about today, and you hear in generally, is done on populations, but you're a person, not a population. Does it work for you? You don't know. You have to find out. So you have to become your own citizen scientist. And the tools exist for you to do this, and we're going to talk about those right now. I've been really avid in the field of biohacking and self-quantification for a number of years, and I've been doing this on myself, to be quite honest, since I was in college and I was an athlete, and I wanted to optimize my own performance. I was also working as a personal trainer, and my clients would come in and say, hey, there's this new fitness program. Is it any good? I didn't know. I hadn't done it before. There's a new supplement out. Is it any good? I don't know. I haven't tried it. So I would test these things on myself and report back to them. But now it's easy. There are 5 factors that I like to think about when we think about self-quantification. And the first, and we've heard a lot of people talking about these different factors already, and you can see some of them in Rad City, and we're going to cover a couple of them right here. So genetics. As we heard last night from Bill Falloon, the human genome now is 100% sequenced. So this is great news. But what's interesting about the worlds of genetic reporting is that we can do these tests at home. You know, you spit into the vial, you send it off to the lab. But different companies are reporting back what those SNPs mean in different ways. So there's still a lot of insights to be gained in genetic testing and what we can understand about our health and how to optimize it. The other field is one that I think is avoided in a lot of health circles. I was really happy that Jim brought this up last night, and I think he really brings this to the forefront, is that piece around mindset. So if you're not already familiar, the field of psychometrics is the attempt to quantify psychology, right? Because this is really going to have a major impact on your longevity. What is your behavioral drives? What is your personality? What makes you excited, right? I love this idea of what would it mean if we all had inside of us the spirit of immortality. What would that mean, right? Like, that's an amazing idea. I was really inspired by that last night, Jim. Like, something shifted in my mind. Like, what would that actually mean if I thought that way? How would I live? What would I do, right? So we've never done this before. We're going to have to really go deep inside and not just talk about the tricks and the tips and the little protocols. No, we're going to have to change our philosophy, the way we think, the way we live, right? If we really want to achieve this. So I think this is an important piece. One of the other factors that we're measuring now, but is still very promising and I think is still unknown, is the microbiome. There's a lot of companies out there making a lot of claims that we understand this, but I think we're still in the early stages. And I'm sure you've all heard the anecdotal stories of like fecal transplants reversing certain conditions. So once we understand how to change the microbiome, we're probably going to be able to do some really amazing things, but at least we can start testing it now, because we're all unique. Where you grew up, your genetics, how the environments you're in is going to impact that. And then, of course, we have our biochemical markers. And this is where a lot of us live, a lot of researchers testing the different biochemical markers. You can go over to Rad City and get your blood drawn and get all this analyzed. But what is really interesting to me is the way I organize these. As you can see, the ones on the far left, genetics is like a one and done. But as we go across, these become things that you have to test more and more and more often. And so the frequency changes, right? And so when you're doing biochemical, maybe that's changing every so often. But psychometrics, your psychology, to be quite honest, in the field of psychometrics, for it to be a validated psychometric tool, it needs to be over decades that you change. So despite what our spouses would want us to do, most of us stay the same person we always were, right? So we need to figure that out too. What I'm here to talk to you about today is biometrics. This is the field that I've been deeply involved in. I was a former executive in a wearable company. I'm constantly testing different wearables. And what's exciting about the world of biometrics is this is moment-by-moment data. This changes every moment, every day, and there's a multitude of ways to measure it. There's watches, there's rings, there's glasses. Probably a lot of you are already doing this. But what I wanted to do is, originally my title was only on biometrics, but I asked if I could blend it with biosensors, because we're starting to add some new technologies like that we can have, like in contact lenses, or even implantables, or ingestibles, or other things where we can get sort of continuous biochemical data in real time. Although this sounds kind of futuristic, it's actually been around for a while. As you can see here, the first CGM, which we're going to talk about, was discovered. They started testing them in 1991, and they just became commercialized recently. And so I'll talk a little bit about the CGMs, or continuous glucose monitors, today. Why does any of this matter? Well, it matters because data has the potential to change behavior. And if we're going to have super longevity, it's not going to happen because there's a magic pill in the future that we're going to take and fix everything. It's going to happen because each and every day we live a life dedicated to longevity, right? And let's be honest, that's not easy, right? It's not easy. We all have our bad habits. We all have these things. Well, let's gonna have another cookie, right? It's no big deal, right? I'll just have another drink, another cocktail. It's fun. It's a party. Who cares? All those things have impact, right? And if you're not measuring it, you don't know what that impact is on your physiology. So what we want to do is we want to catch our disease, because we don't go to the doctor one day, you know, and they do the blood draw, and they're like, oh, you're fine, you can leave. Come back a year later, do the blood draw. You're fine, you can leave. Blood draw, third year, oh, you got type 2 diabetes. That didn't just happen, right? There was a transitional state between pre-disease and disease, and we don't even look at it, right? And I know this audience knows that, but it does deserve to be said again and again and again. So let's catch these things upstream before it's too late. And you know, there's a lot of research that we can do that. So what I want to talk about for the rest of my time is, what can you do now? Not a year from now, 5 years from now. What can you do today? So all of you have access to these technologies, and you need to monitor your sleep, right? Sleep is the ultimate performance enhancement drug. If you're not sleeping, and you're not getting the right type of sleep, and you're not getting enough REM sleep and deep sleep and regenerating your body and your mind, you're not going to live very long. So this is essential. There's a lot of sleep trackers that you can do, and there's some data there. I mean, there's a lot of research on sleep. I don't need to repeat it. But what's really exciting now is this is very easy for us to do. There's a lot of different types of trackers available. If you don't even want to have a ring or a band on your wrist, you can put it in your bed. You can put it next to your bed, right? And you have ambient sensors that can monitor your sleep. A couple things I just want to mention on this. You have the hardware, which is you're using to monitor the sleep. But then really, when you look at it, if you want behavioral change, there has to be some information relationship with your data. So there's a lot of new companies now building apps. So if you have, for example, an Apple Watch, there's a whole host of sleep apps you could download, and you kind of got to just like experiment. What motivates you? What do you understand? How does it even look on your phone? Like, what makes you relate to it in a way that's going to change your behavior, right? And one thing I think also that deserves mentioning is that they look at sleep stages. So for those of you not familiar with these, it's awake, light, deep, and REM sleep. Now, it's really important to understand that this is still relatively new technology, and I'll let you in on a little secret that I'm not supposed to let you know. And that's the REM sleep, unless it's attached to an EEG on your brain, is not as accurate as we would like at this stage. And the reason I say this is because I'm on a lot of forums. I have people come up to me all the time. You know, I'm interviewed about wearables, and they say, I need your help. I have a REM disorder. My wearable says I'm only getting 5% or 3% REM all the time, right? And I spoke to Dr. Andrew Hill. We did a video on this. It's online, where basically we basically the fact is that it's very unlikely you have a REM disorder. Your brain is extremely protective of REM. It's more likely that your wearable is misclassifying REM. So awake, light, and deep are pretty good, okay? But if you do, looks like your REM sleep is a little bit off, don't panic, okay? That's my short advice there. Why that deep sleep is important is, I'm sure a lot of you heard about this. This deep sleep or slow wave sleep is where you get your brainwashing done. And for those of you not already familiar with this, the glymphatic system is a part of our brain, or a part of our system, based on the lymphatic system, that cleans the beta amyloid plaques and toxins out of the brain and the cerebral spinal fluid. And we need to get enough of that deep sleep for the glymphatic system to remove those toxins. So I know all of us want to have strong cognitive futures ahead of us. So you've got to be getting that deep sleep. Now, one little note on this that's interesting as well is it seems there's a relation between the glymphatic system and the nice deep breathing that you do in slow wave sleep. So a lot of us, because of the way our world is, we breathe from the top of our chests, right? And if you're not breathing those deep, slow breaths at night, you are not properly using your glymphatic system. So for those of you who think this might be an issue for you, hopefully this is the motivation to start that yoga practice or do some breathing exercises. You need to do deep diaphragmatic breathing to be healthy. It's very important. So the other metric I'm going to talk about monitoring, so we have 3 metrics I can cover in the time I have today. These are my top 3, but there's many more. The second metric is stress, and the way we can monitor stress, or the best easy marker we have, is HRV. So for those of you, everybody know what HRV is? I could say a fair amount of them. I think I'll just do a quick description. So heart rate variability, it's originally a cardiovascular metric, and it's the dynamic relationship in the autonomic nervous system between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, right? So you have sympathetic, which is fight or flight, or parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So in our modern world, where we're always on, we're looking at our phones 5 seconds before our head hits the pillow, we're getting texts, we're getting emails, right, all the time. Where do you think most people are? In fight or flight or rest and digest? Fight or flight, right? So we really have a very strong sympathetic dominance problem in our culture right now. So you really should be monitoring this metric for yourself, because heart rate variability is very indicative of your longevity potential. And it's, again, relatively easy to monitor with some of the devices, but it is, at the same time, complicated, to be quite honest. That's because nobody really knows exactly there's a lot of argument, but when's the best time to measure HRV? Some people will say you just need to do a measurement first thing in the morning. Some wearables are doing it in the last cycle of slow wave sleep. Other wearables are doing it at different times throughout the day. So, and then add to that complexity, all of the different companies report it slightly differently. So if you're using, for example, a Garmin, the Garmin will call it your body battery. So how full is your battery, right? How much energy do you have to face stress or face the challenges of the day? Whereas Whoop calls it a recovery score, and they're doing that predominantly through sleep. So you wake up in the morning, you sync your data, and you have your recovery score. Or if Oura, I've seen a couple Oura rings around here, you get a readiness score. The bottom line is the idea is that the higher the score, the better your HRV is. And HRV language, high is good, low is bad, right? That variability, that dynamic relationship, you want a high push-pull. And so if you have a readiness score of 95, this is all my data, then that means I was ready to face stress that day, which is a good thing. How do you actually make changes with this data in your lifestyle? And that's what I want to just give you some personal examples now. The trends over time is where the magic is. So it's not about like a one-moment snapshot of your HRV. It's about looking at your trends over days, weeks, months. And if you're trending down, that's a sign that's indicative of something potentially going wrong in your body. So here's an example of my data. And what was happening, you can see here, I started the week off in the green, nice recovery. 2 days, I was in the yellow. And then after 2 days in the red, that's a signal. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not doing good right now. I'm going to go and get an immune IV, do a massage, and a recovery day. And look what happened, right? I bounced right back up. And that's how you can use this information. So you don't, if I hadn't done this, maybe I could have gotten sick, right? Because I've just been too worn out. So that's one of the other great ways to use this. The other reason I love biometric data, because it's so real time, it's in your face every day, and it doesn't lie, right? And so this is not a clinical study, but this is from Whoop's own kind of internal research. They were working with collegiate athletes. And when you're in college, anybody here go to college? Does anybody here remember college? Right? You're drinking so much you don't even remember the thing. So collegiate athletes drink. So they showed them their data. When they had one night of heavy drinking, it affected their recovery score for 4 days. One night. So if you drank on Friday, you couldn't say, well, I'm going to be okay in the game on Sunday, coach. I'm going to be fine. They're like, no, look at the data, right? And they showed them for every additional drink you take, this is what happens to your data. Your HRV goes down that proportion for every single drink. What do you think the collegiate athletes did? They changed their behavior. They wanted to perform. They wanted to get scholarships, right, to perform at their best. So this is how you can use this information, and it's really exciting to me that this is available now. Next up, the third metric we'll talk about, and we heard from Bill Falloon last night about the importance of glucose. I'm with Bill, and I'm with Dr. Robert Lustig. If you haven't heard of his work, he's been doing a lot of the great research on metabolic health, and basically proving that the same pathways to longevity are tied to metabolic health. Now, considering that 90% of Americans are estimated to be metabolically unhealthy, that's a scary thing. I'll say that again, 90%, right? So you hear the statistic that 1 out of 3 people will develop type 2 diabetes. The metabolic problem is even greater than that. So, and healthy metabolism is tied to the signaling across all of our systems. And so you can dive into the data, but your metabolic health is paramount, that you monitor and manage it. So one of the ways you can do this now is these continuous glucose monitors were originally introduced for diabetics, but they've been quickly repurposed with healthy populations. So all of us, you can go. There's a couple different companies doing this. It's being done all over the world. This case is my data with a Dexcom through the Levels app. So in the US, I think the 2 biggest companies are Levels and NutriSense. NutriSense gives you a dietitian. Levels does it more through like AI and their app. So here's my data. I already know that I don't process carbs very well. But this was literally the day I stepped out of a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber at Next Health, went to Erewhon, and got a salmon sushi roll. Look what happened to my glucose. Massive spike, right? I don't metabolize carbs very well. Sushi is not good for me, but I wanted to get the data to back it up. I know. I had to test, right? I'm a scientist, I'm a citizen scientist. I got to get the data. So, and then here, compare that to another evening meal, same time with steak and sweet potato. So I know sweet potato good, white rice not so good, right? And that's right there in front of me, so help me to change what's right for me. So the future of health, in summary, is personalized, it's precise, and it's preventative. And that's what we need to get to. And I'm sure everyone in this room agrees on that. As far as the future of sort of biosensors, I was at CES this year where Abbott Pharmaceuticals announced that they're releasing the Lingo line. So what's fascinating about this I think I have a second, I'll just talk about it. The glucose monitor was originally released for diabetics through doctors. But once they saw that it was being repurposed by all these other companies around the world to be disseminated to healthy populations, Abbott said, well, we want a piece of that action. So now they're creating continuous ketone monitor, lactate, and alcohol. And those sensors will be coming out very shortly. What's really exciting too is we're actually very close to non-invasive glucose monitoring. So right now, if you wear one of these sensors, it's an intracellular nodule that actually has to go inside your skin. So kind of freaks some people out who don't like needles. But we're going to have non-invasive glucose monitoring coming up very soon. This is a company that I met at a BioConvention called Kific Biomedical, and this is fascinating to me. It's like a wearable you're going to put on your arm, and it's going to draw interstitial fluid that you don't even feel. Then you take out the little module, send it off to the lab, and then they can do hundreds of biomarkers from that. So there's lots of interesting things coming, and as I mentioned, there's even things like ingestible sensors potentially that you could potentially monitor your microbiome, I think Ray Kurzweil was talking about these things would eventually, do things in the body. But right now, we're very close to being able to sense these things in the body. So in closing, I would like to just encourage all of you to become the citizen scientist in your own life. An unquantified life will not be a long one. So be curious, explore, and have fun with it. Thank you very much.